For weeks, Palestinians have been protesting in Jerusalem, and now all across Palestine. Protests began at the Damascus gate in Jerusalem after Israel imposed restrictions on Palestinians at the start of the holy month of Ramadan. The protests were further amplified when simultaneously Israeli courts announced they would be evicting Palestinian families living in the residential neighborhood of Sheikh Jarrah in East Jerusalem to make way for Jewish settlers. Joining me from Sheikh Jarrah to discuss more is Zakaria Odeh, coordinator of the Civic Coalition for Palestinian Rights in Jerusalem. Thanks for taking the time to come on the program, Zakaria. It's great to have you on.
Thank you for your welcome.
So, Zakaria, can you, in your own words, tell us, as an activist, as a coordinator, what the protests are about and how the situation escalated? What is happening in Sheikh Jarrah?
There are several really causes which really led to these protests. The protest first started at the beginning of Ramadan, like we're talking about nearly 1 month ago. Today is the last day of Ramadan. So it started when there was when the Israeli police and security, they start putting restriction on Palestinians in Jerusalem, in the old city of Jerusalem, and outside Damascus gate, which is where is like the square of the main square of Jerusalem, which is outside the Damascus gate. They start preventing the Palestinians from being there, from sitting there. Sometimes, this place is where people, they go sometimes in Ramadan to have their own breakfast. Or they go after the breakfast to sit with their children, with their families, with everybody there. So the police started putting restriction and trying to prevent Palestinians from being there. For the last nearly 1-2 years, the Israeli police have been really putting a lot of restriction on people presence outside the Damascus gate and all these squares or areas. It's like stairs there where people can sit. They don't like to see any gathering. So they start doing that in Ramadan. So the protest started by the youth from the first day of Ramadan, where the youth, they would like to go and sit with their families in these squares, but the Israelis were preventing them. So the conflict started there because of the restrictions of the police. And for the nearly more than 2 weeks, and there was this kind of conflict, there were thousands of Palestinians who were gathering every evening from like 7, 8 o'clock till midnight or more, who were pushing, and they were trying to force the police to remove the barriers. They put like a metal barriers, where they prevent people from sitting or reaching the squares. So, and there was a big protest which expanded in all Jerusalem, not only on Damascus Gate, in the old city, on other streets on Jerusalem, in support of the people who are in the square of Damascus Gate. So, and this was escalated as well because the police escalated, the special security forces, the security forces as well, all type of police security forces and forces were really involved. So they deployed hundreds of police every day. So Jerusalem became like a police compound or a military area. The police were in all the different junctions, roundabout, all the areas in Jerusalem. They were harassing the people, they were harassing the youth, they were trying to stop the youth. They were arresting, detaining the youth as well. It's part of really their collective punishment to the people by putting this pressure on them. But at the end, as you may be aware, the Palestinians, they insisting and they force the police to accept that the Palestinian has to be there and nobody can stop them. So they force them to remove because the police, they don't want the resistance to escalate. They don't want escalation in the resistance in other area of Jerusalem, because tension was increasing, protests were increasing in different neighborhoods in Jerusalem, not only outside Damascus Gate, in the old cities, Silwan, Al Isawiya, Mount of Olive, Sheikh Jarrah. Then this was then connected, it's connected with the case of Sheikh Jarrah. You know Sheikh Jarrah?
Yes.
It's a neighborhood where the Palestinian families have been living there since 1956. And two Israeli settler groups, they have been trying to evict them, to force displace them from their homes. You know, this is a community of 73 households. You know, we usually people talk about 28 families, but these are 28 extended families. They are 73 households. They lived there by an initiative between the Jordanian government and UNRWA, you know, the United Nations,
yes,
where Jordan, they gave the land, and UNRWA, they sponsored the building of 28 homes for 28 refugee families who were displaced in 1948 from Haifa, Jaffa, and West Jerusalem. So they have been living there, and according to the agreement that between Jordan and the families, the Jordan were supposed to register the homes and the land in the name of the families 3 years after they start living there. But because of the 67 war, they couldn't do that. Then the land wasn't registered, and people were living there until 1972, when a two settler group, they start claiming that they own the land since 1985. Then they managed to get some kind of registration in the Israeli Tabo, in the Israeli registration office, through some forged document, through some unreal document. They managed to get some kind of registration, and they start taking families to court to evict them. You know, we know in 2008 and 9, 12 families, household were evicted from this neighborhood. And now there are 19 households that they have an eviction order. And because of that, the families were really resisting. The families start initiating these protests, and they joined them, our people from Jerusalem, from everywhere. So since the order of this eviction, which started like few weeks ago, so the protest has started in connection with the protest which was going on in Damascus Gate since the first day of the Ramadan, which is 30 days ago. And since then, there has been protests that people come from everywhere, from the different neighborhoods of Jerusalem, from 48, from several cities, from Haifa, Jaffa, Al-Fahim. So people, they come nearly every day to join the protest, to support our people in Sheikh Jarrah, and to protest against their eviction by the Israeli government and by the Israeli police. So this is as well, because of these protests, and because the Israeli police have been trying to prevent them, they have been trying to prevent them from gathering, from protesting. So they have been deploying a lot of police, a lot of special forces, a lot of security forces in the neighborhood. What they have been really doing for the last 10 days, they have been surrounding the neighborhood. They closed the neighborhood completely. They don't allow anybody from Jerusalem, if he doesn't live in the neighborhood, to access or to enter the neighborhood of Sheikh Jarrah. So they put a lot of checkpoints with hundreds of special forces, special forces in Jerusalem. And they have been really harassing the people every day. They have been really using the horses to attack the youth and the people who are there by the horses. They have been using the scum water. You know, it's a very, very, very bad water. They use it every day with these cars to spread all the homes around in the area. Can you imagine? Yani, we are talking about Ramadan. It's a holy month where family gathers, children, women, old people, all of them, they gather in this Ramadan. They sit outside, they sit in their gardens, and these police cars come with this scum water. They spread the houses, the roads, the cars every day. You can't imagine, even the scum water, the smell goes on for 5, 6 days, even 1 week. It doesn't go. And they do that every day, every day, every day, in order to stop these protests. But in spite of that, in spite that they have been attacking the youth, the gathering every day, they have been using the scum water, they have been arresting people, they have been harassing people, they have been closing the neighborhood. This hasn't stopped the people from coming every day. Thousands they gather around the neighborhood in all the entrance, because you know, tens of police and security, they block the roads, they don't let the people to get in. Young people, youth, they come through different ways. They manage to get into the neighborhood. They do every day Ramadan iftar, and then there are activity. They sing, they chant, and all the time the police with the horses, they storm the area, they attack the people, they destroy the tent which is there. And not only the police, I mean, this is in addition to the settlers. You know, they allow the settlers to bring people from everywhere. They come from different settlements in the West Bank. All these right-wing settlers, they join the settlers who, you know, as I told you, there were some houses which were stolen and took over in 2008 and 9. So they come, tens of settlers every day. They join them, and they start provoking the families. They start provoking the gathering of the youth who come every day from all the different neighborhoods to support the people, the families who are under the risk of eviction. You know what happened like 5 days ago as well? One of the right-wing member of the Knesset, he's been grave. He decided to move his office from West Jerusalem to Sheikh Jarrah. So they put a tent for him. They put a tent, and he put like an office with tens of security, his security, and they were all the time provoking the youth, provoking the families, and his presence led to the escalation of the settler violence, the police violence, the special forces violence against the families, against the residents of the neighborhood. And there was a big resistance by the youth against his presence. There was a big like clashes, battles in the evening. You know, people were preparing just to break their breakfast. And just before they break, some settler, they used, I don't know what they call it, a hot chili spray. They spray on the youth who are waiting to break their breakfast or their Ramadan, their fasting. And then there was a big clashes for nearly 1 hour, 1 hour and a half, where people use all chairs and everything in order to force him to leave the settler or the member of the Knesset. Then because of the resistance of the people, because of the resistance of the youth who were in the area, in fact, they succeeded to force him to leave the neighborhood. And he received even instruction from his Prime Minister Netanyahu. He told him, you leave the neighborhood, because his presence was leading to all this escalation of violence by the settlers and the police. So the people there, they managed to force him to leave the neighborhood. So this is the life of the people that has been going on for 3-4 weeks every day, because of the Israeli plan to remove the neighborhood, to remove the families, and to replace them with settlers.
You know, the way the Western media reports on this, they'll constantly talk about Hamas firing rockets, but they don't actually talk about the violence that Israel inflicts on Palestinians. Could you tell us more about that? Could you tell us about how it actually is?
Yani, the Israeli violence has been going on for weeks. The Israeli violence, the police, the security, the settlers. It's not only really in Jerusalem. It has been going on in all the areas of the West Bank in the occupied territories. They have been attacking. There have been several attacks by the settlers in various villages near Ramallah, near Nablus, by the settlers, by the settlement who are close. They have been attacking the Palestinians. They have been raiding the villages every night. There are villages in the West Bank that are raided by the settlers who are armed. And it's very important to mention that the Palestinians who are protesting, they are completely civilians. They have nothing except their will to resist and to protest. They have nothing. While the settlers, they have armed, all of them, they are armed, all of them, they are protected by the army. And they have been doing all this in the West Bank under the protection of the army. And what's going on in Jerusalem, whether in Silwan, whether in Al-Isawiyah, Jabal Mukabbir, and what's going on these days in Sheikh Jarrah, they do all these harassment, they escalate their violence, and they are protected by the police. When the police come, when there is any problem in the neighborhood and the police comes, they arrest the Palestinians, they harass the Palestinians, they take the Palestinians for detention, but they never took the settlers. And several times that the settlers, they do action, they attack the people in the neighborhood in Sheikh Jarrah, they threw things on the residents there, on their houses and things like that. And when the families, they call the police, when anybody called the police, they harass the Palestinian, they arrest the Palestinian, they don't arrest, they never really arrested any settlers in the area. And as I told you, for the last week, they have been closing the area completely. They are not allowing anybody from the neighborhood. Ramadan, even some families, their sons or daughter who are married they are married and they live like in other neighborhood. The daughter lives in Beit Hanina. Her residence is in her address on the ID, her identity card is Beit Hanina. But her family in Sheikh Jarrah. So she couldn't join her father and mother for iftar. Can you imagine what does that mean? I mean, people, especially the West, they don't understand what does it mean when you close an area and you don't let anybody, they check everybody ID cards. I go every day, and when I try to go, I am lucky where I live. It's, Sheikh Jarrah, it's a big neighborhood. Part of Sheikh Jarrah is the neighborhood that is under forced displacement. So my ID, the address is Sheikh Jarrah. And that's why I am lucky. When I go there, what they do at the checkpoint, at the barrier? The officer, he asked 1 or 2 police to escort me to the house to see me where I get in the house in the neighborhood.
They escort you?
Can you imagine? So many families there, they couldn't in Ramadan host or welcome, have their children, their sons or daughter to come to their house because it's their address, like they live in different neighborhood. Look what does that mean? So the West or the media, they don't talk about this because this is violence. This is really violence. It's not, they talk only the concern when there are rockets coming from Gaza, but they don't talk about the daily, it's a daily violence, it's a daily harassment by the police, by the special forces, by the security, by the army everywhere in the West Bank as well. It's a daily life for us, through the checkpoint, the closure, arrest, detention. It's every day. Unfortunately, this is for the West. They don't talk about that. They don't talk about this issue, which is like the daily life of our people everywhere in Jerusalem. Although according to them, that Jerusalem was annexed. It's very important to mention that. It's very important to mention that Jerusalem is an occupied city. Jerusalem is part of the occupied territories. Jerusalem, according to international law, it should be applicable. International law, Geneva Convention is applicable in East Jerusalem. It's not the Israeli law. But what Israel done, you know, since the first 2 weeks of the Israeli occupation in 1967, they annexed Jerusalem. What does that mean? They put Jerusalem under the Israeli jurisdiction. And this is illegal. This is a basic violation of international humanitarian law and international human rights law. It's very clear. And you know, they start controlling the land, they start confiscating land, building settlement. You know, now Israel is controlling 87% of all the land of occupied East Jerusalem. Only 13% of the land that is really left where Palestinians can build.
Yeah.
So, you know, so it's very important when we talk about what's going on, the protest. It's not really only connected that there are 15, 20 family will be evicted, or it is a battle on the stairs of Damascus Gate, because they start calling it the battle on who control the square of Damascus Gate. No, this is, I mean, what's going, this is only like the sparking issue, the sparking for all these. It's like we call it maybe mini intifada or habba, we call it, you know, because this is the result of 54, you know, in June it will be 54 years of Israeli occupation. It is the result of accumulation of this continuous, very systematic policy, land control, building settlement, expansion of settlement, restriction on building for Palestinians, restriction, home demolition. You know, every day there are tens of homes that are demolished under the pretext of there is no building permit. You know, the Israeli municipality, they don't provide permits for us as a Palestinian to build. And at the same time, if you build without a permit, they demolish your home. Yani, I don't give you a permit, and if you build without a permit, I demolish your home. So a lot of these things, closer of Jerusalem, you know, Jerusalem is completely now closed with a separation wall, with the wall, and only there are 4 or 5 gates that we can access, go and live. You know, by closing the wall and the military checkpoint, by closing Jerusalem, 4 million Palestinians from the West Bank and Gaza, they denied the right of access to the city of Jerusalem, which is one of the main holy cities for both Muslims and Christians, unless they get a permission from the military administration. So the youth are facing a lot of challenges. It's very difficult to get accepted to the universities. There is a lot of restriction, no job opportunity. You know, most youth, they get what we call it physical jobs.
Manual labor.
They don't have opportunity for the right jobs for them. So what they are doing, I mean, the youth have been under 54 years that they're trying to squeeze them. They are trying to put always under pressure. So what do you expect? So youth and people, they blow up. And that's why all was going on, whether in Sheikh Jarrah, Silwan, Bab al-Amud, the old city, which expanded now, it's in all the West Bank, it's even in all the region, it's in Palestine, in 48 as well, you know. Every day there are demonstrations, Haifa, Yafa, Nasra, Lod, in all the cities inside Palestine 48. So it has been everywhere. Why? Because all of us, all Palestinians in Palestine, whether in 48 or in the West Bank or in Gaza or including especially Jerusalem, we are living under a continuous systematic policy of harassment, oppression,
Yeah.
arrest, detentions every day. Even children are really, they arrest children every day in Sheikh Jarrah, everywhere. So
Zakaria,
these are really the roots of all these protests that have been going on for weeks.
you know, I just read that they arrested, the Israelis arrested the writer and journalist Rassam Abeidat. And I wanted to ask you what you think about that, and you know, how risky it is being a journalist, being an activist, an organizer in Jerusalem, in occupied Palestine, and also maybe just a second question: what makes this this uprising different from others, and how long do you think it will last?
You know, first of all, for the first question, there is in Israel and with the Israeli, with the government police, there is no protection for anybody. You know, journalists everywhere, they are protected and they shouldn't be arrested. But here, every day, that some journalists are really arrested, they are harassed, they are beaten. You know, every day they beat the journalists in Sheikh Jarrah and Silwan and in Bab al-Amud, they arrest them. As you said, they arrest today Rasim. Last week they arrest Ahmad al-Safadi. Every day there are journalists who are subject to arrest and harassment. So there is nobody protected under the Israeli occupation. You know, they don't respect.
Yeah.
They don't respect international law. They don't respect international humanitarian law. They disregard all these laws. You know, always Israel, they behave as if they are above the law, above the international law, above all these conventions, human rights protection. So there are arrests every day. You know, every day they come and they arrest and they arrest people. You know what makes this difference? That these are popular resistance and protest that started by and initiated by the people who are under the harassment, under the suppression, under the protection, under the oppression. So it's not organized by political parties or groups, no. It is spontaneous, started. You know, I told you that the first battle was about who controlled the stairs of Damascus Gate. Yani, can you imagine? And it escalated, it developed, it became, and it started with like tens of young people, then hundreds, then thousands every day. And then they succeeded to force the police to leave the area, to remove the barriers. The issue of Jerusalem started with the families. Then the people joined them from Jerusalem every day. Then it spread to the other neighborhood of Jerusalem. You know what happened in Al-Aqsa, storming Al-Aqsa mosque the other day. Can you imagine in Ramadan when there was nearly 50, 60 people in Al-Aqsa? They stormed it with a sound grenade, gas bombs, using all means inside the mosque. They attacked the people who were praying in the mosque. Yani they use all these means for harassment, for attacks against people who are really, they have nothing. They just were praying. Can you imagine? You know, the second maybe you heard, you know, people, they come, it was the 27th of Ramadan, Laylatul Qadr, where people come from everywhere. It's a very holy night for Palestinians. So thousands of Palestinians were coming from the Haifa, Yafa, from 48. You know what they did? 30 kilometers or 40 before Jerusalem, in the highway, they stop all the buses. They prevent them from continuing to Jerusalem. They force the people to walk, to get off the buses and transporter and to walk to Jerusalem. You know what happened? In Jerusalem, there was a call in the social media everywhere. They told people, please, everybody with his car, with her car, go to this area where people were waiting there on the highway, bring them to Jerusalem. You can't believe hundreds, even thousands of Palestinian private cars from East Jerusalem. They closed the whole highway for both sides, and they were bringing the people to Al-Aqsa, to the old city, until after 4 hours, they forced the police to reopen the highway.
Right.
I mean, can you imagine, yani, this, what we call it, what's going on, it united the Palestinian everywhere in 48, in Jerusalem, in the West Bank, in Gaza. So, so what's going, whether from Gaza or 48 or from the West Bank, it really, the harassment of the Israeli policy, the oppression, the escalation of Israeli police harassment and the settlers led that it unite all the Palestinians to be united, to resist and to protest everywhere. You know, there are demonstrations yesterday, today, the day before yesterday, in most of the cities in the West Bank, in Gaza. So I don't know how things will go on, but as long as there is the occupation go on with its policy, you know, even if we call it occupation, we undermine what's going on. In fact, what our Palestinians are facing, they are facing a colonial settler apartheid regime. So we facing ethnic cleansing policy, forced displacement in Jerusalem and other cities, and we face a discriminatory apartheid policy every day in our life.
Yes.
In Jerusalem and in other cities under Israeli occupation. And you know, it's important when we talk about Jerusalem, Sheikh Jarrah, to talk about the whole picture, which is all Jerusalem. You know, it's not really only Sheikh Jarrah. I think you hear. I mean, all the different neighborhoods are targeted. You know, Silwan, in Silwan, it's a neighborhood in the south of the old city. Several neighborhoods are under demolition. Al-Bustan, we are talking about 120 families. There are a demolition order for the whole neighborhood. You know why? According to the Israelis, they want to build a biblical park. They believe that King David was walking in this area. Can you imagine? They want to displace 119 families because they claim and they say that King David was walking in this area. Another neighborhood, Wadi Yasul, 48 families, they want to demolish their home to expand the national park. But in Hawa, they claim that there were some Jewish families in 1920 were living there, so they want to evict nearly 100 people, 800 people in this neighborhood because they believe or they claim it was reside by Jewish family. But they were Jewish Palestinians. There were no Israel in 1922.
Yes.
But they want to force eviction of these people because they believe that this. So there are many houses, there are many neighborhoods, settlement expansion, home demolition, closure of the area, restriction of access of movement. Maybe you heard during the Easter last week, they prevented the Christian from reaching the Holy Sepulchre Church to celebrate the feast. They put barriers, they closed the gates of the old city, they attacked the Christian who were trying to reach the church, preventing from reaching the church.
Unbelievable.
So this all this big picture of what's going on Jerusalem is really the causes of all these protests, of all these, I don't know what to call it, Habba, Intifada, mini Intifada. And you know, the Israelis are really very, very worried. They don't want to see a third Intifada as well in Jerusalem and the West Bank. And that's why there are some kind of pressure that they have tried, maybe they postponed the court for Sheikh Jarrah, which was supposed to be a few days ago. They postponed it and they requested that the general attorney of the Israeli government to interfere into the discussion, the legal discussion. And
Yeah.
they said, okay, we'll give the attorney 1 month. I think what they are trying to do, they are trying to wait until things will calm down in Jerusalem, in the West Bank, everywhere, and then we'll go on with their plan.
But so, I mean, the protests, they had an effect on this decision, you think, yeah?
Yes, for sure. It's the main effect. It's the uprising. I don't know if we can call it uprising. It's the protest, which is in all the neighborhood of Jerusalem, in all the different area of the West Bank. And now it's everywhere in Palestine, every day. You know, yesterday there was a curfew in Lod. Lod is one of the city in 48. They declare a curfew, and they have been discussing to deploy the army in the cities in the Green Line inside the 48. So it is now everywhere. And they are trying, and with what's happening as well from Gaza, with Gaza as well, it's all of it connected to each other's.
Yes. Zakaria Aoudeh, thank you so much for your time. It's really, really my pleasure and my honor to have you on the show. And, you know, I want to say that, you know, we are always with you. ما في حدا أقوى من الشعب الفلسطيني. يعني نحن دائما معكم. دائما. أنا my cousin, he is half Syrian, half Palestinian. His grandfather came to Syria after the Nakba. So, you know, I'm always with Palestine. يعني عيد مبارك إن شاء الله والله معكم ونحن دائما معكم وندعمكم دائما.
أنا Richard, I am a refugee from Lifta. Maybe you heard of Lifta. It's one of the village in West Jerusalem which was depopulated during the Nakba. So all of us, we know what does it mean. And these people in Sheikh Jarrah, all of them are refugees. And they say, we don't want to become refugee for the second and third time.
Exactly.
That's why they are insisted, we will not leave, whatever it will cost us.
Yes. So I completely understand. And you know, I think most people, they you know, they are tired of the lies in the media. And so, you know, I really thank you for coming, because a lot of people are going to see this and they will have their eyes opened even more, I think, because they hear about it, but they don't understand the reality of it. So I'm really grateful for your voice.
You are welcome. Anytime you are welcome. If you need anything, I'll be more than pleased. Thank you.
Likewise. Thank you so much, Zakaria.
Thanks.
Okay. Allah ma'ak. Bye.
أهلين. شكرا كثير.